Welcome to Morbid Outdoors, the podcast that ventures deep into the shadows of the wild. Here, we unravel the mysteries of missing persons, explore spine-chilling legends, and share the most morbid stories that nature has to offer. From the depths of the dense forests to the highest mountain peaks, we'll uncover the secrets that lie hidden in the great outdoors. Join us as we navigate the eerie, the unexplained, and the terrifying. So if you dare, grab your gear and let's embark on a journey into the unknown. This is Morbid Outdoors. Hello, everybody. Happy Friday. I hope that you guys have all had a really good week. So when you listen to this, I actually will be in Canada. My husband and I are celebrating our second wedding anniversary at Waterton Lakes National Park, and we are so excited to visit this national park. And then we are doing Glacier after that. So super excited for our upcoming trip. It'll be a super fun trip. And so this is being recorded in advance. And I was driving through Immigration Canyon this morning, and I saw little peaks of fall color. And I am so excited for the fall, the cooler weather, the color, and just to get outside a little bit more since it won't be so hot. So I hope you guys have a lot of fall-themed activities planned to get outside and take advantage of the amazing weather we're about to have. Let's get into our episode. Lake Mead is one of the nation's most scenic and popular water recreation areas. It boasts cold waters, desert landscape, and amazing rock formations. But under those blue waters lie secrets that no one counted on surfacing. Bodies have been being found in Lake Mead for years, and they hold decades-old secrets only few know. Today, we are going to Lake Mead National Recreation Area. Now, I've only seen Lake Mead from afar, but it's actually a super popular destination for boaters, hikers, and fishermen alike. It's beautiful and would be the most refreshing location on a hot summer's day. And this is a quote from Visit Nevada. Quote, "This year-round national park spreads across 1.5 million acres of mountains, canyons, valleys, and 2 vast lakes. Just a stone's throw from the dazzling lights of Las Vegas, this extraordinary playground beckons with a symphony of possibilities." End quote. What a beautiful quote about Lake Mead. I feel like Lake Mead gets a bad rap, but honestly, it is stunning. So, as you know, first, I'm going to read some 1-star reviews about Lake Mead. Now, Walter rated Lake Mead National Rec Area 1 star and said, quote, "Too much wind," end quote. Jeff rated it 1 star and said, quote, "Crowded with noisy people," end quote. And Gabriel said, quote, "Ugly, sad, not much to see and do," end quote. I just can't believe some of the negative reviews about national parks and national rec areas and national forests. So I just like that, just reading about how ignorant people are. But we are going to talk about Lake Mead and when it was established. So Lake Mead Recreation Area was established October 13th, 1936, and it's like close to 1.5 million acres, like I said. Now, formation of Lake Mead began in 1935, less than a year before Hoover Dam was complete. So I have been to Hoover Dam. I guess I've been to Lake Mead, but I've never actually been on Lake Mead before. The area surrounding Lake Mead was protected as a bird refuge in 1933 and later established as the Boulder Dam Recreation Area in 1936. But the name was changed to Lake Mead National Recreation Area in 1947. So this area has obviously been around for like millennia, but it was protected, federally protected as a bird refuge before it became a national rec area. Now, in 1964, the area was expanded to include Lake Mojave and its surrounding areas, and this actually became the first national recreation area to be designated as such by the U.S. So that's your one trivia fact for the day. Lake Mead is the nation's first national recreation area. So, in 2012, with 6.3 million recreational visitors, Lake Mead National Recreation Area was the 5th most visited national park. And okay, so it's not a national park, but it is managed by the National Park Service. And so that's why sometimes some of these resources will say national park. But it is the 5th most visited national park run area. Lake Mead is the largest man-made reservoir in the United States, spanning more than 110 miles into Nevada and Arizona. When Lake Mead is at its fullest, it has a maximum depth of 532 feet. It also has 246 square miles of surface and holds 9.3 trillion gallons of water. Now, I know a lot of you know that Lake Mead is not at its fullest, and it has not been for a very long time. But if it was, those are the numbers behind how massive of a reservoir this is. Lake Mead is 25 miles east of Las Vegas. It also provides water to the states of Arizona, California, and Nevada, as well as some of Mexico, providing sustenance to nearly 20 million people and large areas of farmland. This is a very, very important reservoir. And so there are tons of conservation efforts going on right now to protect Lake Mead. Now, there are currently 9 officially designated wilderness areas under the National Wilderness Preservation System that are within Lake Mead National Recreation Area. And all of these wilderness areas are in the Nevada portion of Lake Mead. And parts of some of these wilderness areas lie outside of Lake Mead National Recreation Area, and those are managed by the Bureau of Land Management, or BLM. And these wilderness areas include the following: Black Canyon Wilderness, Bridge Canyon Wilderness, El Dorado Wilderness, Aratiba Peaks Wilderness, Jimbilanan Wilderness, Muddy Mountains Wilderness, Nellis Wash Wilderness, Pinto Valley Wilderness, and Spirit Mountain Wilderness. Now, obviously, some of those words are from the indigenous people, and I do not speak those languages, so I did my best to pronunciate those, and I would love it if you as listeners would cut me some slack. So thank you for being understanding that a lot of the words that we'll be discussing in this podcast are not words that I have experience with or might know how to pronounce 100% correctly. There are 900 plant species in Lake Mead National Recreation Area and 500 animal species that include mountain lion, bighorn sheep, bats, and other mammals. There are also 24 rare and threatened species in Lake Mead, and one of them is actually the relict leopard frog. I'm not going to attempt to say its taxonomy name, but it is now believed to survive only in this area. So that is super cool. And also an announcement for you. don't touch any frogs in this area because they could be this very endangered, very special frog. Lake Mead in the Mojave offers some of the country's best sport fishing. The following species are found in both lakes: largemouth bass, striped bass, crappie, rainbow trout, catfish, and bluegill. And so this is actually a pretty historic area. And if you know anything about Lake Mead's history, you'll know that there's actually like a town under there. And sometimes you can see it when the water level gets low enough. So, Lake Mead National Rec Area holds over 100,000 museum objects and archives. There are 1,300 recorded archaeological sites, 23 historic structures, 8 listed National Register properties, and 2 traditional cultural properties. And like I said, there's an old ghost town, which was once a Mormon settlement under the lake. Its name is St. Thomas, and you can actually view some structures still left with water levels going lower and lower. Now, back in 2022, when most people were getting over the pandemic and getting back to a, quote, normal, the levels of historic Lake Mead were starting to drop. And as water levels fell from May to October of that year, they were at historic lows. And there were a lot of eerie discoveries made. I mean, so many of these secrets just made their way to the surface. At least 5 sets of human remains were found around the lake. And a couple who were boating came across a body inside of a barrel near a harbor. Less than a week later, 2 sisters on paddleboards found a jawbone in the sand. And later on in July, a family out for a picnic discovered partial skeletal remains encased in mud along the shoreline. Now, it's just so creepy. I in my free time, the little free time that I have, I love to hike and backpack and camp and paddleboard. And I've always said that my worst fear ever is finding human remains while I'm enjoying my day. So every time I head outside, that's always in the back of my mind. And it actually happened to these people in 2022. Now, of course, law enforcement officials had the task of identifying these remains. And their work was not easy, and it still isn't, because some of these remains have not been identified. Some of these bodies were underwater for decades, leaving just skeletal remains, the first set of which dates back to as early as the 1970s. The years have passed, making figuring out who these bodies belong to and what happened even more difficult. But the first case involved a victim who was shot and placed in a barrel, and that obviously is a homicide. But in other instances, such as drownings, it's all but impossible to establish the cause and manner of death. Officials have publicly identified one person, who was a man who was believed to have drowned, but whose cause of death was deemed undetermined, and they continued to work on the other cases. Now, starting on May 1st, 2022, boaters returning to the dock after enjoying the blue waters of Lake Mead heard a scream from the beach. Obviously, this was very alarming to them, and upon further investigation, they came across a corroded metal barrel stuck in the mud near a popular boat ramp. Inside, they could see clothing, which were a shirt and a belt, and what they eventually realized were human remains. Officials were able to determine, due to the clothes and sneakers still intact, they belonged to a man who was shot between the mid-70s and early 80s. The barrel was partly encased in mud, but at the time it was dropped into the water, the lake was much higher, and it had nested roughly 100 feet underwater and a few hundred yards from shore. So that's not someone taking this barrel out on their boat and dumping it in like the deepest part of the lake. That is a very hasty pull up to the boat ramp and just, shove it off, and that was not very well concealed, minus the fact that these remains were in a barrel. Now, the local mob museum discovered the killing as having all the makings of a gangland hit because the victim was shot in the head, execution style, and crammed into the drum, which they say was historically a mob method for disposing bodies at the time. The authorities still have not identified this person, but have circulated renderings of what this man most likely looked like when he was alive. This is being investigated as a homicide, obviously. Homicide detectives had requested DNA from multiple families to help solve the case of the body in the barrel. Metro Police previously told 8 News Now investigators that, these families were chosen from several unsolved missing persons cases from that time. Now, we're going to talk about the identified bodies that were found in Lake Mead. And these bodies were identified through DNA analysis that helped determine the identities of the 3 other people whose remains were found in 2022. So, these are who these people were, according to Clark County officials. The first one is Thomas Ernst of Las Vegas, who was reported to have drowned in August 2002 at the age of 42. His remains, found in May of 2022 in Lake Mead's Colville Bay area, were identified in August of 2022. The cause and manner of Ernst's death are undetermined. On July 25th, 2022, Claude Russell Pensinger of Las Vegas was also discovered. Now, he had disappeared at age 52 in July of 1998. His remains were found that summer on the shoreline of Lake Mead's Boulder Beach. His remains were identified this year, and the cause and manner of Pensinger's death has not been determined. The other remains that were found belonged to Donald Smith of North Las Vegas, who was reported to have drowned in April 1974 at the age of 39. His remains were also found in Colville Bay area in October of 2022, and they were identified this year. The cause of death was determined to be drowning, and the manner was accidental. So it's also very odd to me that these other people that were found, their remains have been identified, but the cause and manner of death are not determined, while Donald's are. And that to me is a little suspicious, but anyways, bodies are not the only things that are being found since Lake Mead receded years ago. In July, scuba diver and treasure hunter Dallas Rowley discovered a long-lost boat while exploring the lake shores. Inside the boat were eating utensils, telephones, and plaques, and he actually took footage of this discovery and posted it to his YouTube channel. I have attached a link for incident reports from Lake Mead wreck area starting in 1986, and there are tons of drownings and boat fatalities. I have also included a boating safety link for you all. Now, if you grew up like me on the water a lot, boating is super fun, but it can be very dangerous if proper precautions aren't taken. So I highly suggest you check out this link and maybe share it with, your friends or family that go boating a lot, because a lot of these things are maybe afterthoughts to a lot of some people. And boating is one of the most dangerous things you can do because of other people, the water, the weather turns quickly. And if you're an experienced swimmer, that won't necessarily mean that you're going to survive an accident on the water. Always wear a personal flotation device while boating or swimming. So, Lake Mead seems to have tons of secrets, and I only wonder what secrets will surface next. As always, recreate responsibly and make sure to have fun. And remember, the outdoors aren't always great. See you next time. Okay, and I just have to say, as an afterthought, For those of you who know me in real life, you know what my job is, and I am a speech language pathologist. And if you don't know what that means that I'm a speech therapist. And I just want to point out that even though I'm a speech therapist and this is like that's my career, that doesn't mean that my speech and my communication and my delivery is always 100%. And I only share this because I work with so many people and families and educators and other professionals that assume that someone's communication needs to be 100% or they need help. And that's not the case at all. My job is not to pathologize like everything, right? So I just want to put it out there that even though my profession is speech language pathology, that doesn't mean that I'm going to have like an awesome, no mess ups, no mispronunciations. So I just wanted you to know that even though I'm an SLP, I still struggle with recording this podcast. So thanks for being gracious with me and patient. And I would really appreciate if you share this podcast with others. You can share it with family, friends. If you're enjoying it, share it. I also have a link in the show notes to submit campfire stories, which is something I plan to do that's going to be like listener stories about creepy things outdoors. So if you want to hear your story on the podcast, submit your campfire stories. This can be anything related to outdoor activities or anything like that. So I hope you guys have a great weekend, and thanks for listening and thanks for sharing, and I'll see you next time.